Her family touched that despite all these years, the community shows up for them and Alisa, who was just 13 when she went missing.
On the evening of Sunday, August 6th of 1989, 13-year-old Elisa Roberson left her family's home at 431 South Whitney Street in Aransas Pass, Texas. She was headed to meet a close friend, Debbie Green, just a short 6-minute walk away at nearby Keyburger Elementary School. Her walking out of her home that evening is the last time her family has ever seen her. 36 years later, the mystery of her disappearance remains just as painful and significant to her loved ones as it was that night. Before we hop back into the case, this video is sponsored, and it is sponsored by a longtime supporter of this channel, which is Factor. If you've never heard of Factor, Factor is owned by HelloFresh, a popular name in the food delivery space that many of us already enjoy. I like switching between the two, similar to how I rotate with Green Chef. That said, Factor has its own unique appeal, offering an always fresh, never frozen meal prep subscription that brings restaurant quality dishes straight to your door every week. Factor completely takes the stress out of meal planning. No more grocery runs, chopping, or cooking burnout. Just heat for 2 minutes and enjoy. Each week, you'll get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meal options to choose from each week, including keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more, there is something to suit every taste and lifestyle. If you are a regular viewer of my channel, you already probably know that I adore this brand. It is my favorite food-related delivery service there is out there. Do remember that they don't just have meals for lunches and dinners, but also add-ons. They've got breakfast, they have snacks, smoothies, fruit drinks, wellness shots. If you want to try Factor yourself, you can head to factor75.com or click the link below in the description of this video and use code 50gabulosis to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50gabulosis at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. Thank you, Factor, for sponsoring another one of my videos. Now let's get back to the regular program. Today we are continuing the case of Elisa Roberson. This video is part 2. Part 1 is linked in the description of this video. If you haven't already watched part 1, please watch that one and then come back to this one. That video, we explored Elisa's background, who she was as a teenage girl growing up in Texas during the late 1980s, the events leading up to her disappearance, the day that she vanished, and the early stages of the investigation. This video picks up where we left off, and we again hear from her sister Ruby and mother Marina, two women who have fought tirelessly for answers. In today's video, we're also going to be hearing a little bit from the private investigator currently working on the case. If you are all caught up, let's get right into it.
So we moved, my family, my mom moved us out of Aransas Pass in, I think it was 1991. We were going to we were going to an LDS church, and my mom, after Alisa disappeared, of course, my mom didn't know who had taken Alisa. This person was still out there. So she lived in constant fear. And then when she started seeing Ralph again, when he started coming back into town, that's when she freaked out. She totally freaked out. And she went and talked to the bishop and his wife from this church and let them know, I'm terrified. My ex-boyfriend is Alex's dad is still in town, and we don't know. I think he took Alisa, and I'm scared, and I don't know what to do. And my mom didn't have a car. She didn't have any money. She didn't have any family here. All her family was in Nicaragua. My dad had moved about a year before that to Alaska, and he actually told my mom, talked to my mom and said, hey, let's go to Alaska. But at the time, my mom wasn't ready because she was thinking, like most parents do, that Alisa's going to show up. I can't leave. So my dad went to Alaska, and he was a fisherman there. And when Ralph started coming around, that's when the loft houses asked my mom, where would you go if you did go? She says, I don't know. I don't know where to go. In hindsight, I keep thinking, well, Mom, you could go with Dad. Dad's in Alaska, but I don't know what my mom was thinking at the time, if she didn't want to go to Alaska, or of course, it's my mom and dad, they're separated, and I don't know why. And I've never asked my mom that, but maybe I should. But, and she was crying to the bishop and his wife, and they said, well, if we would help you, when do you want to go? And she says, today. So they made arrangements. They told my mom, they told us to pack a small bag. We didn't know the day we were leaving. They told us not to tell anyone. We weren't to tell anyone. They didn't even give us a day or time, I think, to keep it secret. So so they, one day they came to our house and they said, we have tickets. It's time to go. It was in the middle of the night, early morning. We took our two little bags. Everything got left behind. All of Elisa's things. I don't even know if anything got taken. We were just in such survival mode that we just needed to get out of there. And it was so sad. It was so sad to not be able to say bye to any of our friends, and to go to a place that we didn't know. So they were from Idaho Falls, and that's where we are today. We ended up here in Idaho Falls, and it truly was. It was sad. It was heartbreaking, and we didn't know until years afterwards that all of our friends wondered what happened to us. Nobody knew because we weren't allowed to. We couldn't. We just could not contact them at all because my mom was in fear of Ralph coming to get us. That's how terrified she was. In fact, when we moved to Idaho Falls, my mom was still sleeping with a butcher knife under her bed for years. That's how terrified she was of Ralph coming back. So we came here and we left that behind. My mom still had a contact with the post register. She would still send letters, and she would ask her to keep in contact with her to let her know if anything comes of Elisa's case, to please let us know. My mom would write yearly letters to do a tribute to Elisa every year. I don't know what was done during those years from the time we left to 2009 because we weren't in contact with them. I think there were some things done here and there, some sightings of Elisa, putting her name out, picture out on magazines or flyers, but I don't know the extent of all of that.
From 1989 to 2009, a span of 20 years, 2 decades, very little progress was made in Elisa Roberson's case. This wasn't due to a lack of concern from her family, though. On the contrary, they never stopped caring or hoping for answers. But over time, they found themselves at a loss. With few leads and no solid direction from authorities, they didn't know what more they could do to move the case forward on their own. And as you just heard from Ruby, Marina, their mother, lived in fear of her ex-boyfriend, Ralph. So much so that they all moved to Idaho Falls, Idaho, an area roughly 1,700 miles northwest of Aransas Pass. Mike and Linda Thompson, who we talked about in the first video, served as the lead investigators assigned to Elisa's disappearance. They pursued several possible theories through the years. Mike and Linda suspected that Bob, someone close to the family, might have had something to do with Elisa's disappearance. As we discussed in part 1, Bob is the father of Debbie Green. Meanwhile, Marina believed that her abusive ex-boyfriend Ralph could have been the one involved. Despite these suspicions, both theories stalled. Investigators were unable to uncover any concrete evidence to support either possibility, and as time went on, the trail grew colder. Without new information or physical evidence, the case remained at a frustrating standstill. For Elisa's loved ones, those 2 decades were filled with unanswered questions, emotional exhaustion, and the pain of knowing that the person responsible might still be out there. In 2009, the 20-year anniversary of Elisa's disappearance, Ruby felt that they needed to do something to memorialize Elisa, the sister that she missed dearly, the sister who would have been 33 years old at this time, but forever 13.
And so 2009, it had been 20 years since Elisa disappeared. And I decided, I talked to my mom and my family, and I said, we need to do a memorial for Elisa. She's never been grieved. We have no place for her. My mom was still that terrified of Ralph that she didn't want me to go, and she couldn't go. She couldn't bring herself to come to Aransas. And she was terrified for me. She said, that Ralph could still come and get me. That's how scared she was. And I had my husband, we weren't married at the time, but he came with me, and we decided to have a memorial plaque made for Elisa, and to get a tree planted. We asked for permission from the Keyburg Elementary School, and they allowed us. They said you could plant a tree for her. So we did a little memorial for her, planted the tree, put the plaque out. we had some of the police department, which is very odd. That time in 2009, we had the police chief at the time. I don't remember his name, and some police officers that were there, and they had no problem being there and honoring Alisa. But that hasn't been the case since. They've separated themselves from us. The events that we've had since, there have been no law enforcement, nobody from the Aransas Pass Police Department come to represent them, and that's really sad. So 2009, that happened. Fast forward, granted, I was a young single mother. We couldn't make a trip up every year. So the next trip that happened was in 2016.
In 2009, a small memorial, a tree, and a plaque was placed at Keyburger Elementary School, the very school Alisa had been walking to on the day that she disappeared. As we covered in part 1, this was also right near the location where the search dogs, including bloodhounds and cadaver dogs, lost her scent during the initial investigation. The memorial serves as a quiet tribute to Alisa's memory, marking the last known place connected to her mysterious disappearance. In 2016, this is when Texas EquiSearch got involved in Alisa's case. You may have heard of Texas EquiSearch before. It is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping locate missing persons. It was founded in the year 2000 by Tim Miller, whose own daughter, Laura Miller, was abducted and murdered in 1984, and her body was located 2 years later. Laura's body was found in a field in Texas, and this field is included in what we consider the Texas killing fields. The term Texas killing fields refers to a specific area along Interstate 45 between Houston and Galveston, Texas, where the bodies of numerous murder victims have been found.
We had found out that Texas EquiSearch had gotten involved. Linda Thompson had reached out to Texas EquiSearch asking if they'd be willing to search some of Bob Green's properties. And Tim Miller they had driven to Aransas Pass to go talk to the chief. They went and talked to the chief, and Mike and Linda Thompson were treated very badly. They weren't allowed, they were basically told to this is none of your concern, just mind your own business. So very early on, they realized they weren't welcomed, and they didn't want them to be a part of. They had retired from the police department, spent several years there, and were treated like garbage. So Captain Rhodes, Captain Kyle Rhodes, Ranger Tony DeLuna, and Tim Miller from Texas EquiSearch decided it would be a great idea to search our childhood home, because according to Captain Rhodes, who's never even really asked us, there was supposedly some addition done to this house that we had rented. My mom had no money. We were poor. We rented the house. We were housing assistants. The house wasn't ours. But supposedly we had done an addition to the home. We had poured a concrete slab, and some tip came in that supposedly Alisa never left our home that day, despite several eyewitnesses' accounts that she did, and that my mom not only added this addition to the house, but then poured a concrete slab and was able to hide Alisa's body. And there it is. So when we didn't know what was happening when we got there. The Captain Rhodes reached out to us in DeLuna, and they asked us if we'd be willing to come in and talk to them.
So in 2016, Linda Thompson wanted Texas EquiSearch to get involved in this case because she wanted them to go to Bob Green's properties and search, because she believed that Bob Green might have had something to do with Alisa's disappearance and that something might be buried on one of his properties. This, though, is when things completely flipped, and authorities stated that they received a tip that the Robersons renovated their home, poured concrete, and that Alisa may be under their prior house sitting at 431 South Whitney Street in Aransas Pass.
We realized, it takes some time to process a lot of the trauma that happened, but we realized that we were being interrogated. I had been questioned for a few, it was 2 or 3 hours it seemed. Then my mom was questioned for a couple of hours, and then shortly afterwards, they asked my mom if she'd be willing to take a polygraph test, and she did. And I wish, hindsight's 2020, and I wish I would have been able to realize what they were doing and what was happening, but it happened so fast, and we were just so trusting and just so oblivious to what they were doing that we just walked right into their trap. my mom was there, and I came to pick her up after the polygraph, and they met me outside. They stopped me before I could even go in to get my mom, and they stopped me and they told me that my mom failed the polygraph, that she's guilty, that she killed my sister, and that I know what happened to her, and that I needed to confess, come clean. I remember it was Captain Rhodes and Tony DeLina that were telling me this, and I was crying, I was upset, and telling them, no, I was there that day. I was there when Alisa came home. I was there when Alisa left. My mom and Alisa did not fight. And if they had, that wouldn't be such a big secret. You know, moms and daughters fight all the time, but they didn't fight. And so I told them, I know what happened. I was there when, and Alisa left the house, and they wouldn't listen to me. I was crying, I was in tears, and it was horrible. And pretty soon the representative from Texas EquiSearch had gone on social media and talked about this search, because they were on the search, they were doing a dig. Captain Rhodes eventually told me that they had found what they believed to be bone fragments and tissue, and that they would be sending these samples in for testing. And then this representative from Texas EquiSearch went on social media, talked about everything that had been done, that there were some supposed hits to the house, some digs that were done, and what they believed to be also ground penetrating radar. They did that, and they found what they believed to be an anomaly, which they believe is Alisa's body. But they put they had to stop because they were compromising the foundation of the home, is what we've been told. So this wasn't done on a search warrant. This was all consensual by the homeowners that allowed them to come in and do this search and these digs. And they still maintain, Captain Rhodes talked to someone from the Cold Case Foundation a few months back, and she was told by him that this isn't a missing persons case, that he knows where Alisa's remains are, and it's a matter of logistics. We were told by by Chief Blanchard, that there is evidence to believe that there is family involvement in Alisa's disappearance and her death. So they want us to believe, and they want the public to believe, that Alisa's remains are there. They wholeheartedly believe that her remains are there, but they cannot retrieve her remains because it will compromise the foundation of the home, and because they don't have the funding to do so, despite state resources that they could have reached out to years ago. So they gave us, there was just complete silence. They did not give the public, the community, our family, they didn't give a press statement or anything saying, we found something or we didn't. They just let it lie. And it wasn't until we had to force the issue, because we then became angry after we're almost at 10 years.
For many years, the Roberson family was publicly targeted by people who say that they had something to do with Alisa's disappearance. Investigators and officials stated that there was a body down there under the house, but that they couldn't get to it because it would ruin the foundation of the home and because there wasn't enough funding.
It's something that I did discover in the last year, is that words are very powerful. In Chief Blanchard's chit chat with the chief session on April 17th, he said, "When you see others dealing with tough situations through feedback and negativity or eviscerating the other individual, that is soul crushing." And I wish he was here so that I can tell him what soul crushing looks like in my life and in my family's life. In 2016, Texas EquiSearch, under the supervision of Captain Kyle Rhodes, searched our childhood home based on an alleged tip that Alisa's remains were somewhere on our property and that she never left our home that day, despite several eyewitness accounts that she left our home. News reports from the time used words like "break in the case" and "new leads in the case." Captain Rhodes, in his September 2016 report to City Council, stated that newer leads are being followed up on, and soil samples were sent to a lab for testing. I was told by Captain Rhodes himself that they had found what they believed to be bone fragments and tissue, and that they would be sending them to testing. It was so traumatic that my family vowed we would never step foot in this town, my hometown, where my dad worked with Gulf King Shrimp as a shrimper for years. We vowed we'd never come back to this town. But we are here today for my sister Alisa because it's important. So we are here. My mom's here. My husband's here. My brother is landing as we speak. So we are here. We are more empowered now than we were before, and we will not be broken again. Recently, a tipster from a prominent foundation, the Cold Case Foundation, called and spoke with Captain Rhodes, who very bluntly told her that he knows where Elisa's remains are and that she is no longer missing, but that it is a matter of logistics. There is no misunderstanding in what is being implied here.
Well, just this past week, I was notified by Ruby that the chief of police today has verified that there was never a body located.
When we were talking to Chief Perkins yesterday, he said that he could, to rest assured that there was never, they never found a body. So they never found any remains in our childhood home. And I had asked him if he would be willing to just put out a statement just to let everyone know in the community, finally just end it once and for all. And he didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. So we're going to impress upon him that's his duty as over Elisa's case as the chief of police. That is your duty to make that statement to the community. Because for the first time in all of this, I've been told clearly that there was never a body found. Just wanted to let everyone know what the chief told us. And we were excited about that. And we will continue to push. And it's, again, our theme is a call to action to do the right thing. And Chief Perkins, this is on you to do the right thing, to put out a statement. You are the Office of Origin, and as stewards over Elisa's case, you have a responsibility to Elisa, to the community, and to her family to say what needs to be said. And that is very important.
Keep in mind that I have been researching this case for months and working with Ruby on these videos, and the part about them supposedly locating a body under the house but giving every excuse under the sun of why they couldn't dig up that body was one of the most frustrating parts of this entire case. I, though, had no idea that the truth would come to light during the process of me making my part 1 and part 2 on this case. Elisa's family has endured unimaginable heartbreak from the very beginning. Just the pain of her disappearance alone is more than most could bear. But beyond that, they've also been forced to deal with an overwhelming amount of unnecessary stress, much of it caused by others. Over the years, multiple individuals have added to their suffering, not only by creating additional emotional strain, but in some cases by actively hindering the investigation itself. It's a burden that no family should ever have to carry, grieving while also fighting against obstacles that should have never been put there in the first place. When authorities at the Aransas Pass Police Department were questioning Ruby and Marina in 2016, they also tried to get Ruby to turn against her mother. They tried to create tension between the mother and daughter as if Ruby knew that her mother had been responsible and that they just wanted her to come clean, which Ruby has stated dozens of times is so far from the truth. Ruby knows her sister left the home that day in summer of 1989, and there were multiple witnesses to back that up. Another major roadblock in this case came again from within the investigation itself, when authorities began focusing on someone as a potential suspect that no one ever expected. It was a shocking turn, casting suspicion on a person who, until then, had never been considered capable of involvement. You're probably wondering who this potential suspect could be. Well, authorities started saying that possibly Elisa's brother, Tony, had been involved.
Okay, so Tony always puts a smile to my face. Like he was a true joy. Tony was born. He had there were complications at birth. So when Tony was born, he wasn't breathing, and he went without oxygen for some time before they finally revived him. So that had, at the time, we didn't realize it, but they had caused some brain damage. So poor Tony, as a young child, there was a lot of hyperactivity. There was a lot of impulsivity, not being able to really communicate what he was feeling. At the time, my mom didn't understand the hyperactivity, until it was pointed out by a social worker that he had, that they thought that maybe he had either some mental problems or some disabilities. So he went and got some testing, and they were able to find that he had, attention deficit disorder and some, there were some other things that they diagnosed him with. And they put him on medication. It helped some, but then of course this was you didn't have a name for some of those things. And now we realize, there was a lot more, it was a lot more complicated than just attention deficit disorder for Tony. There were some mental health issues as well, that came about, I think, because of a lot of things that were happening with Ralph and the abuse. He was very, very abusive to Tony and harder on Tony because Tony was difficult. You know, you needed a lot of patience for Tony. But Tony was a sweet, we called him Crazy Tony, but he was a sweet boy. He was crazy, but he was very protective of his sisters and his little brother Alex and my mom. If my mom was ever being abused or hit by Ralph, Tony was the first one to run. And it always reminds me of Forrest Gump, Run, Forrest, Run, because he was always the first one to run to the police station. Ralph would pull the cord out of the phone cord out of the wall, so we couldn't call. So it was up to Tony to. And sometimes we did outside our window, we put like a mattress so he could jump out. It was a little 2-story building, so he would jump out and he would run to go get help from my mom. But Tony struggled. You know, he struggled with a lot of people took advantage of him. He was very vulnerable. He was a year younger than me, but he was still had the mindset of a child. And talking to Tony, his laughter was so infectious. Like he was so funny, and he remembered details. Like I just could not believe the details, and I wished I would have talked to him more while he was alive. But I don't like to talk about his sentence because I feel that people use that a lot. People love to exploit families and their pain, and Tony things just kept getting worse for him. And he was in a situation, people don't understand that he was in Alaska at the time. And from the time he was in jail and then he got released, in the middle of that, my dad had passed away. And then we were trying to get him back here to Idaho. So they released him on the streets. Someone with the mentality of a 8-year-old kid, they released him on the streets. So poor Tony, who was constantly being targeted and very vulnerable, and was picked up by somebody who then sexually exploited him. And that's how he ended up, he ended up killing this person, and he ended up in prison. So, but people don't understand. People don't understand what he went through. And I'm not saying that it was right, or they just don't understand, but they love to say, well, he killed someone, so he could have killed Alisa. That's just ludicrous. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. Siblings fight. I mean, we all fight. I mean, you know, there were times Elisa and I would fight, but it wasn't like we were beating each other up. We were doing normal sibling stuff. And Tony had struggled. He had a lot of mental health issues. He had a lot of trauma. He was constantly traumatized his whole life, and in prison you can only imagine that. And we tried so hard, but I think it was bigger than what any of us could do. And Tony was let down by the system. He was let down by us. I mean, we didn't know how to help him. He was let down by a lot of everyone in Tony's life. Let him down, and some of us let him down because we didn't know any different or any better or how to help him. But we loved Tony, and Tony loved us too, and Tony would never hurt any of us. In fact, it was quite the opposite. So when people make those accusations and those claims, it infuriates me to no end. Like, can our family not, is there anything else that you would like to pick at my family? Any other relationships, any other losses that I've had that you would like to target? Because I love how people like to, it's like vultures just coming in and they just pick everything apart until there's just nothing left. It's just been very painful. Tony's loss. He committed suicide in 2017, a year. So it was, and it was in August too. So, let's just, I don't even know what to say anymore about that.
Tony struggled a lot mentally and was sent to prison for taking the life of someone who targeted him sexually. Then in 2017, Tony took his own life. This entire situation with Tony very well could have snowballed from childhood. What happened to him when he was a baby, the abuse from Ralph, losing his sister, and living in a world that didn't really understand him and was unable to offer him proper help. There has never been any evidence that has connected Tony to what happened to Alisa, but because he took someone's life down the line, authorities pushed the theory that he may have had something to do with it, even though he was just a child himself at the time that she went missing. Ruby, though, is insistent that her brother would have never done anything to their sister. This theory that Tony was possibly involved in his sister's disappearance didn't go anywhere, and for obvious reasons. One thing, though, that did come out of all of this is that the Robersons hired a private investigator named Richard Norgard to help them in Elisa's case, since authorities weren't much help and wanted to, from what it seems, turn things on the family. The PI works for them free of charge because they had developed a prior friendship with him because he had actually represented Tony during his legal issues in Alaska.
But I spent many, many hours with Tony, and I did get to the point where I felt close to him, almost like he was, a younger brother or something, because he was, number one, he was very, um, uh, he had he had a wonderful sense of humor. Um, he, he sort of would talk about and I sort of got to feel for what you had gone through as a family. Also talking to you and your mother, documenting the things you had gone through during that time with Ralph and so forth. But from Tony's perspective on what it was like for him, and and especially as a younger brother, um, missing his sister, and and wanting to help, and of course I found that Tony had a wonderful memory. He he could remember, he could remember things that I couldn't remember when I was that age, but he could remember them. And so he could provide certain details on things that I found to be very helpful. But anyway, after spending all that time talking to him, I sort of felt like I really, knew your family very well, and and even though I hadn't gone through it, I really felt um, I really felt sort of a lot of empathy toward what you had gone through, and sort of felt close to your family in that way. So when it came time to wanting to help with this old missing persons case, it was almost like a natural thing to want to say, because I have a certain amount of expertise, how can I help lend my expertise to this effort that you're trying to do? So it was sort of a natural transition.
One of the first things that Richard wanted to do was start from the very beginning of this case, be a fresh set of eyes, and this was something that the family needed. So he reached out to the police department in an attempt to access the files on Elisa's case. They informed him that the case is still open and active, and for that reason, they can't do that. They said, though, that he'd have to make another attempt through the district attorney. The DA kind of gave him the runaround, but Richard did his best to convince them that he had a good background, he could be trusted, and he just wanted to help the family. It went back and forth for a bit. He had to sign some paperwork, do an affidavit, and finally they sent over some information on the case that's in her case files. Except, unfortunately, the 120 pages they sent over were heavily redacted. As Richard told Ruby in a recent interview with her that I'll link below in the description if you do want to watch the entire thing, what they gave him was basically worthless. Richard has genuinely worked very hard through the years on this case, but with little from the files to help lead the way. He has hit dead end after dead end. Richard has talked to some people he feels may have more information to give forward, but refuses to. And we also have to take into consideration that he's working with people whose memory may be a bit foggy due to this case being decades old.
So anyway, so memories are very flawed. So that's a problem. And then people die. So there are names that were, there were a few names that we were able to figure out from the stuff that's, even though the names weren't in the report, based on some of the information in the reports, we could kind of figure out who those people were. But then when I would go back and try to do research online, and through records, to try to identify where they are now and how to get a hold of them, turns out a lot of those people are dead now. So, there's all those things. And so when people say, well, why hasn't Richard solved the case? Uh, the police have had 35 years to solve the case. And, you know, we, we have some theories, but theories aren't solutions. And the police, we've had to deal with police getting into a mindset about certain things. We've had people, as you and I both know, have actively tried to interfere in our efforts to get to the bottom of this for whatever reason, whatever their motives are, who knows? But there's, it's been very frustrating for you more than me, and um, and we've tried, we're trying to get other organizations involved too, to tap their resources, get their help. And so, I continue to hope that the people who, and they know who they are, the people in Aransas Pass who have information about Elisa's movements and who were close to her, I'm still hopeful that those people will get a conscience and come forward and talk to me, because I think and I know that they have information that could be helpful, whether they know it or not. And so I'm ever hopeful that they will, come forward.
As we know from part 1, there were 2 people mainly looked at, Ralph Gonzalez and Bob Green. One being Marina's mentally, emotionally, and physically abusive ex-boyfriend, and the other being the Robersons' family friend. Now, in 2009, during the first memorial held for Alisa at Keyburger Elementary School, Debbie Green, Bob's daughter, was actually in attendance, and this was the first time that Ruby had seen her in a very long time. Their interaction seemed normal, even supportive, but things took a surprising turn years later. In 2016, Debbie suddenly turned against the family, shifting the tone completely and adding another layer of pain to an already devastating situation. This is when she started saying that the family may have had something to do with Elisa's disappearance. This is when she told authorities that one day at the Robersons, she had seen a bloody bag at the home. As Marina has stated, after Elisa's disappearance, the Green family distanced themselves completely from the Robersons. Debbie never came back to the home after Elisa went missing. At this time, Marina asked Linda Thompson, why is Debbie saying all of this? And Linda told her that she believes it is because Debbie's father, Bob, was responsible. But like I've said before, people have differing opinions. Richard Norgard, the private investigator, has stated that yes, there is a lot that makes Bob look suspicious, even including his arrest in 1991 for indecency of a child, but he personally doesn't believe that Bob is their guy. We also have to remember that 2 witnesses stated they saw Elisa enter a red or maroon vehicle. Bob at the time drove a green vehicle and also occasionally a white truck for his business. On the day of Elisa's disappearance, when Bob came to the home, he was driving a green one, a green Datsun. As Richard stated, there was one Texas searcher who thought Bob was responsible and spoke with Richard regarding his thoughts. There was going to be an interview of Bob, but unfortunately that did not come to fruition. Now, I can't talk about this case without addressing the ongoing controversy surrounding Debbie Green, Bob Green's daughter, and the very friend Elisa was on her way to meet the day that she vanished. Someone who definitely made their presence known in the comments section of my previous video on this case. Debbie has made numerous statements about the Roberson family over the years, and these claims are all very serious. However, none of these accusations have ever been supported by any solid evidence. What her goal is still unknown. We are all wondering that. This is someone who previously stated in 2009 that her father may be responsible. Then in 2016, there was some sort of switch. We have to think, is her goal to clear her father's name and put blame on someone else, or is it a cry for attention as a result of a mental health struggle? I personally feel like every podcaster and YouTuber covering this case has had to word it similarly, but the bottom line is the behavior of Debbie Green is deeply concerning, with my main question being, if you truly believe this family had something to do with Elisa's disappearance, then why did it take them advocating more for this case with the help of social media and the public for you to step forward? Has this family not gone through enough? Debbie's unfounded, baseless accusations wasted time, effort, and money, ultimately achieving nothing and leaving a family re-traumatized by the entire ordeal. Not only did authorities and side characters in this case target this family and come up empty-handed, but there has never been a public apology for the harm caused. No one has ever come forward stating, "We made a mistake and we came to the conclusion that this family actually has nothing to do with their loved one's disappearance." No one has ever publicly apologized for the way that they targeted this family for years. In 2016, there was an article released claiming in big letters there was a break in a 27-year-old cold case stating a search of 431 South Whitney resulted in a positive cadaver dog response and several new interviews. Soil samples are being sent to Texas A&M University for testing. The investigation continues. That's exactly what it said. Then they just left everyone in the dark. Complete radio silence. And why is that? Because nothing was ever found. And just this past week, the chief of police finally told Ruby that, yeah, no, we never found a body. There was never a body.
Congratulations to the current police department, however, and the rest of the award winners. I appreciate that. This family has gone through hell and back on account of the actions taken by the police department. A recent statement released on November 8th by the Roberson family states this: the family of Elisa Roberson, who disappeared from her home in Aransas Pass, Texas, more than 35 years ago, is demanding that authorities, with all possible speed, marshal all available resources, federal, state, and or local, to identify and recover Elisa Roberson's remains, that according to Police Chief Eric Blanchard and former Captain Kyle Rhodes, that her remains are located at 431 South Whitney Street and return them to the family, or, in the alternative, acknowledge publicly that her remains are not really there. Their demand is a product of frustration that has been building since 2016. The Roberson family wants answers, and the people of Aransas Pass want to know as well as hundreds of other people that are following this case. First, tell us about the bone fragments that Captain Rhodes told the family that he found in that home, and then give us the results of those soil samples that were sent to Texas A&M University. Tell us why Chief Blanchard told this family that there's evidence of family involvement in Elisa's disappearance and death. A statement should have been made 8 years ago. This is unacceptable by any measure. By refusing to do this, this has not only harmed the Roberson family, but has also hampered the family's efforts to bring Elisa home. And it's a black mark on Aransas Pass. Second, give this poor family those case files. Not today or tomorrow, but how about yesterday? No one's going to fight harder than that family. I can only imagine how much time, energy, money has been spent and put into this effort. Attorney fees, travel, reward money, none of that's cheap. Ask yourselves this question: why would a family, if they were guilty, be putting forth all this effort and spending all this money? The answer is because they want to bring their beloved sister and daughter home. It's that simple. City of Aransas Pass, it's time to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
It took 9 years for them finally to admit there was no body. The thing is, when Richard Norgard agreed to take on Elisa's case, he told Ruby directly, "Yes, I am a friend of the family's, but I'm going to see this case through. If anything leads me back to the family, I will not hesitate to go to authorities with that information." But there has never been anything to make him believe they had anything to do with it. Richard today still hopes to piece together a little bit more of Elisa's story before she went missing. He is asking anyone with any information to please come forward, anyone who may have anything to add regarding that weekend or anyone who saw her that day that she went missing. You never really know what bit of information may lead to solving this case, so if you did see Elisa that weekend at all or the day that she went missing, even if you think it's not important, just come forward and let them take it from there. As we know, Ralph and Bob were always the two main people looked at, but no one can rule out the person being responsible being someone who was simply driving through the neighborhood and decided to kidnap her. That is, as well, a very likely possibility. This family, though, just wants answers, and they believe that someone out there today has those.
Yeah, I'm still hoping that somebody that knows what happened, because we know that some people that know what happened, then maybe they will finally pick up the phone and make that call, so that we can put this case to rest and give Elisa a proper place to rest, bring her back home, to be again with her family. And I know that that she's probably no longer, in the world, but we want her here so we can have a place to go and bring flowers to her, and remember her, the way she was, and that's all we ask for.
In 2020, remains were located on Hog Island near Aransas Pass, but these remains were determined to be ancient remains, no chance of them being Elisa's. Again, another dead end. As for the two main people lying under suspicion, Ralph and Bob, Bob is still alive. He was born in 1929, so he's definitely getting up there in age. He'll be 100 in 4 years. Ralph, though, he has never been tracked down by the Roberson family. They still have no idea what happened to him. If either of them know anything, we still don't know. Ruby has been at the forefront of the advocacy work for Elisa's case, updating people regularly on the Facebook page Missing Elisa Roberson, which I will have linked down below in the description of this video. If you are wondering why it's a Facebook group and not a Facebook page, and that you have to actually enter the group and get approved, it's because, like I stated before, there are people who are quite harassing. Ruby did let me know that they went forward with having Elisa pronounced deceased, and it was approved by a judge. This just happened on August 4th of this year. So Elisa, after 36 years, has finally been declared deceased. Over the years, numerous memorials have been held in honor of Elisa on the anniversary of her disappearance. These gatherings have served as solemn reminders of her absence and have brought together family, friends, and community members who continue to mourn her loss and seek justice.
Search is far from over.
We're here today because of Elisa. We're here today to honor her memory, to walk with her. We're still looking for her. We're still searching for her.
And that means investigating the case, talking to people, hoping someone will come forward with that one piece of information.
In honor of the 35th anniversary, the city of Aransas Pass formally declared August 6th Elisa Roberson Remembrance Day.
I'm very grateful for this proclamation that we were awarded on Elisa's honor.
The most recent memorial took place on August 6th of this year, reflecting the enduring impact of her case and the unwavering support of those who refuse to let her memory fade. Each year, these events not only commemorate Elisa's life, but also highlight the ongoing need for answers and accountability.
And this is where we lived 36 years ago, where Elisa left our house and never came back home. This is surreal. Like, come back here.
I know it was running through everybody's mind when we were all that age, where all the kids were scared of what if this is going to happen to us. I mean, it changed the town tremendously. They need the closure. They deserve it. And the more people that get involved and pay attention, there'll be more eyes on this, and maybe sometime the family gets some closure.
I thought that I would do a little recap of what happened this last week. This is more for me than for anyone else, and I appreciate everyone listening to me and let me say what needs to be said. But I'm glad to be home here in Idaho. I feel that this is home. Every time I go back to Aransas Pass, I just feel like a fish out of water. It takes a lot out of me. I go there for a mission. And so it can be really emotionally, mentally, physically draining to go back. It brings back a lot of course, a lot of past hurts, a lot of sadness, and every now and then I get a glimmer of hope. So I know that you can feel all the gamut of emotions, and a lot of them contradict each other. That's how it always is. It's always a roller coaster ride when I go back. It never gets easier. Every year I think it'll be a little bit better this year, and it's just as hard. Um, August is hard, a hard month every year. Um, the main thing that we want to do, well, a couple of things. Number one is we want to bring awareness to Elisa's case. We never want it to be forgotten. Um, and the second thing is we want everyone to know, especially the police department and the powers that be, that we are still fighting as hard for Elisa as we ever were. We want them to know that we're not going away, and that we're going to continue coming back, and we're going to continue fighting. So we feel it's important because there's a big, and I've said it before, it's different when you have to write letters and emails and make phone calls. It's completely different than having to sit face to face with someone. You're having to now acknowledge that person. You're having to acknowledge their story. You're having to acknowledge their pain, what they're going through. And it's so much easier to be able to ignore people when they're not there. When they can see you, there's a different effect. And that's what we want to do. We want to be able to show them face to face that we're the family. And as a family of Elisa Roberson, we deserve to have a seat at the table, and we deserve to be kept in the loop. For so long, and I'll repeat this, for so long we've been left out in the dark to try to figure this out and piece things together. And it's not right. It's never okay for the family to feel like they're a nuisance, or that they're being ignored, or that should never be the case. And we are now in their face saying, you're no longer going to ignore us. We're going to be acknowledged and validated. As much as you don't want to validate us, we're going to be validated. And when we come to the town and we have these events, it may be just a silly, honk and wave or a walk, but this is so important because it's people are paying attention. When you get the media out there and they come and they show up with their cameras and they want to know what you're doing and why, of course it's just a story for them, but it's getting attention. Elisa's getting attention. And when you have the city council showing up and you have city leadership supporting you and showing up and holding signs, oh boy, that makes a statement loud and clear that even city leadership is supporting your cause. So that means the world to us. When you have friends that show up every time supporting you, that means the world to us. So little kindnesses like that, little things like that may not mean whole lot to a lot of other people, mean the world to us. So I want to thank all the people that are always there showing up and supporting our city leadership. My really good friend, dear sweet friend, Beatriz Garcia, my dear friend, Darlene Mann. You two are always there. I want to be there every year, and I want to do this. It's something that I've said every year, but I'm realizing in this last trip, I realized that it may be something that I just can't do. It is hard physically, mentally, emotionally. It's draining. It's hard on my husband. It's not just my cross to bear. He's right there beside me, so it's his as well. And he's always there to make sure that things get done. Every time we go there, the first thing he says, anything that you need to happen, you let me know and I'll make it happen. And he's always in the background, but he's always right there. You see him right by my side, shouting Elisa's name. But I do realize that each year it gets harder financially every year. And so there are a few people that are willing to do this every year for us. So I may have to hand the torch over. I'll still make all the noise. I'll put out everything that needs to be put out, but they may have to be the ones that be the boots on the ground in Aransas Pass, because it's hard going back every year. It's hard. And it just throws me off. So We went and talked to the Chief Perkins. I felt that the meeting was very positive, but again, I have felt this before, and of emotions where you feel hope and then you feel defeat. So I feel hope, and then I wanted to meet again with the chief just to talk to him about a letter that our family investigator Richard Norgard had me. I hand delivered it to him in our meeting. I asked if we could just have a meeting in regards to that letter, and I didn't get that meeting. And that's the other thing. I go up there for a week during the week for all these important meetings. I think I've got all these important things to do, and very quick I find out it's just not as important to everyone else, and I can't expect it to be as important to everyone else. It's never going to be as important as it is to the family of the missing loved one. And so I go there, and I just did one meeting, and then I did the awareness events, and I feel hopeful. That the chief's when he spoke to us and he said that he wants to do right by my family, I felt like he was sincere. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's a new chief. He's taken this in. He's picked up a mess from the last administration and the last chief. So I have to give him the benefit of the doubt. You can't get better than having the mayor of a town in on these meetings, and the mayor pushing for things, and the mayor showing up. When city leadership shows up, you can't have it better than that, than to have city leadership supporting you. So that is awesome. We haven't had that before. We know how the last administration was. They didn't seem to care. So I'm so grateful for that. If you show up for me and you support me, that's all that I care, and that's all that matters to me. Again, the only thing we can hope for is to keep Elisa's case alive, and that's why we show up. We show our face there. We don't want Elisa to be forgotten about, so that's why we keep showing up. I keep doing this. It's in your face. It's constant, and I'm sorry. I know there's some burnout and fatigue from a lot of people. I understand that. It just keeps replaying in my mind, and there's just no way for me to ever escape that. So I appreciate everyone just bearing with us and just being okay with this crazy ride. All we can hope for is that somebody will come forward and somebody will hold the key to be able to solve this case. And we just want to bring Elisa home. We know that each year we get further and further away from finding a resolution and finding Elisa. We know that. It's 36 years. Come on, it's a cold case, and we know that these rarely get solved. But like my good friend Robin Peary said, Elisa's not lost. She's out there. She's lost to us right now, but she's out there somewhere. Someone's going to come upon her remains and find her, and there's going to be some kind of testing done, and we're going to find that this is Elisa. That's how we believe that this case is going to be solved. We don't believe that someone's going to come forward and say, we know what happened, or I did this, or we believe someone's going to come upon her by accident and find her remains, and this is how we'll find closure. We can still hope. Life is nothing without hope. And so that's what we hope for. We hope to just keep Elisa's memory alive. She was a real person. She wasn't just a case number. She wasn't just a case file. She was an actual human being and a person that meant something to many people. And we want to keep that always in the forefront, that Elisa was somebody to us. Also, the Aransas Pass Police Department, they are stewards over this case. They hold jurisdiction over her case, and they owe it. They owe it to the family. They owe it to the community to do the right thing. And again, the family, nobody is going to fight harder for their loved one than the family. We have the resources available. We have people waiting to help. We just need those case files, and that's what we're going to continue fighting for. We do know that depositions are going to be coming up soon, because there's no, we haven't been able to come to any agreement yet. So we know that soon this fall there's going to be depositions. So we can only hope that that something will be worked out, because it's time. It's been long enough, and we just want this resolution. So again, thank you again to all my friends who support us in the background, all our new followers. Thank you for all the support and the love and kind words, and as little as just sharing her picture, sharing a poster, sharing a flyer, or anything, it means the world to us and can help eventually someday give us answers that we need. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Ruby told NBC News in 2024 for the 35th memorial, "When things get so hard and like when you're fighting so hard, I have to step back and I have to sit here and say, what am I doing this for? I'm doing this for Alisa." Anyone with information regarding the disappearance of Elisa Roberson is urged to contact the Aransas Pass Police Department at 512-758-5224 or the family's tip line at missingalisa1989@gmail.com. There is currently a $20,000 reward for information leading to her remains or an arrest in her case. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch part 1 and part 2 and to learn about Alisa's case. It is one that I feel such an intense connection to, and that's honestly why it took a little bit of time for me to come out with these videos, is because I genuinely wanted to do a good job. Ruby, seriously, you are doing incredible work, and I didn't have the privilege of meeting your sister, but I know that she would be proud of you. You are not only pushing this investigation forward and helping the case in any way that you can, but you are making sure that along the way, people are learning about your sister and realizing that she was so much more than just a name tied to a cold case. I hope with everything in me that you, your mother, your brother Alex, that everyone can gain some peace one day and find out what actually happened to Alisa. I promise that this is not the last time you're going to hear about this case on my channel. This is not the last time you're going to see Ruby on my channel. We discussed it a little bit, and we're definitely thinking about going forward with an actual interview. So if there are any questions that you still have about this case, any questions that you have for Ruby, make sure to leave those down below in the comments. I hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day wherever you are. Stay safe like always, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.